Zero-gravity sword fights, moons getting vaporized, city-sized ships dueling in orbital firestorms, and demons clawing their way into real space in the middle of it all.
Oh my god! Wow!
This is the Solar War, the Horus Heresy's biggest, most batshit insane space battle, and quite possibly the single coolest space war in all of sci-fi. The Solar War was the opening salvo of the Siege of Terra, the moment Horus finally brought the heresy home. It's the battle where the traitor legions breached the Sol system itself, clashing with the last desperate defenses of the Imperium. Moons were shattered, millions died, entire fleets burned in the void, and loyalist heroes gave everything to hold the line. And yet, despite all that carnage, the Solar War is still one of the most underrated books in the entire Siege of Terra series, and honestly, one of the most slept on space battles in all of Warhammer 40K. So in this video, I'm breaking it all down. We'll cover what led up to the Solar War, how the battle raged across the system, from Pluto to Luna, and what happened in its brutal aftermath. Then, we'll talk about why this battle is so damn cool, and why it deserves way more love from the community. As an avid fan of the Siege of Terra, I had to make this video because no one talks about how cool the opening of the siege is, and I need my herd to know the truth. This is the coolest space battle in Warhammer 40K, period. So let's set the stage. Before the first shot was fired at Luna, before the void burned, before demons clawed through reality, the Imperium knew this day was coming. Horus had declared open rebellion, half the galaxy was on fire, and Terra, the heart of it all, was next. So how did we get here? To truly grasp the scale and madness of the Solar War, we've got to rewind a bit.
Yeah, it's rewind time.
Look at the buildup, the shifting of fleets, the fortified planets, and how the Imperium scrambled to prepare for the biggest siege in human history. This is what led to the Solar War. It began with Horus's fall to chaos on the planet Davin, where the once loyal Warmaster was corrupted by the ruinous powers. From there, the heresy spread like wildfire. The infamous dropsite massacre at Istvan V saw Horus's forces turn on their brothers, wiping out 3 loyalist legions in a single calculated ambush. With the loyalist counterattack shattered, Lorgar unleashed the Ruin Storm, a massive warp storm that tore the galaxy apart and cut Terra off from aid. Pressed for time and eager to strike before reinforcements could regroup, Horus chose the most direct route to Terra, through Beta Garmon, one of the few stable warp translation points that led straight to the Sol system. The result was an apocalyptic clash of titans, Astartes, and Voidcraft in a system-wide bloodbath. The Imperium fought desperately to stall him, and although the battle was fierce, Beta Garmon eventually fell. With the warp clearing and the gate to Terra broken wide open, nothing stood between Horus and the throne world. And so began the Solar War. Before we dive into the absolute clusterfuck that is the Solar War, we need to talk about how the Loyalists prepared for the oncoming threat of Horus and his bald-ass head. With the Emperor locked into the never-ending war in the Webway, and Malkador battling behind the scenes, Rogel Dorn, the Primarch of the Imperial Fist, and my autistic king, became humanity's last bulwark. He transformed Terra into a fortress, stripping the Imperial Palace of its grandeur, reinforcing continents, seas, and void anchors into impenetrable defense zones. But Dorn knew Terra couldn't face this alone, so he converted the entire solar system into a multi-layered trap. He created 5 concrete spheres of defense, each a choke point designed to bleed the Warmaster's forces before they reached Luna and Terra. The first sphere covered Pluto and Neptune, and was commanded by Sigismund, everyone's favorite Black Templar. His forces were a collection of Imperial Fist ships, and he was aided by the defense systems of Pluto's moons, which had become literally living gun platforms, courtesy of Dorn's genius. The second sphere over Uranus was commanded by Fleet Master Helbrick, who held watch over the Elysian Gate alongside his own armada of Imperial Fists, Imperial Army, and Mechanicum vessels. The third sphere, which guarded Jupiter, was commanded by Seneschal Ifrid, who was reinforced by Imperial Army and Blood Angel fleets. The 4th Saphir over Mars was commanded by Camda Diaz, and as Mars was still in rebel hands, he was forced to maintain a blockade strong enough to contain the Dark Mechanicum and would soon come under attack from both the Void and the planet itself. And finally, the 5th and final Saphir guarding Luna and the Throne World was directly overseen by Rogel Dorn himself. This was the last line of defense and held the largest armada of vessels, including the mighty Phalanx, the massive starship of the Imperial Fist that few on either side could hope to match. But as Horus slowly advanced towards Terra, more and more traitors began to attack the Sol system. Whether a disorganized group of pirates or an organized group of Astartes, they began to make way for the arch-traitor's approach. And thus, there was no sleep for the defenders of the Sol system, and attacks were not only coming from the outside of the Sol system, but now from within, as Alpha Legion saboteurs and Chaos cultists sabotaged what defenses the Loyalists had. And one of the biggest eternal threats was the presence of the Dark Mechanicum, specifically the planet of Mars, where the Loyalists held back recurring breakout attempts from the Dark Mechanicum forces under Kelbor Hals, the Dark Fabricator General, who was patiently awaiting relief from his traitor allies. The Loyalists were completely surrounded and cut off by the constant warp storms around Terra. And so, what Loyalist Primarchs remained, Rogel Dorn, Jekatai Khan, and Sanguinius the Bright Angel, prepared to meet their traitor brothers. Every move was calculated, every bastion prepared, for time was running short. Before moving on to the battle itself, let's quickly address Horus Luberkow, the arch-traitor's victory conditions. First off, the Warmaster's path to Terra was not a campaign in their traditional sense. It was a blitzkrieg across the stars, a hell-forged race against time. His goal was not merely to reach Terra, but to shatter the Loyalist defenses before his Loyalist brothers, most of all Guilliman, could respond and reinforce the Sol system. The longer the war dragged on, the more strategic the tide would turn against him. Guilliman, Lionel Johnson, Lehman Russ, and Corvus Corax were all rallying Loyalist remnants across the galaxy, and their eventual arrival would tip the scales irreversibly. Horus had to win quickly, or not at all. To achieve his aims, Horus wove the tendrils of chaos into the very bones of the Imperium. To uncover the defenses Rogel Dorn had prepared, he unleashed the Alpha Legion to infiltrate the Sol system. Their sleeper cells embedded themselves across the segmentum solar, spreading sabotage and mass terror. In M3110, 4 years before the Solar War commenced, these plots erupted into the Battle of Pluto. The Alpha Legion schemes wrought devastation across the segmentum, while Alpharius himself, the Primarch of the Alpha Legion, used these distractions to assault Pluto itself. Unfortunately for the twin Primarch, he would meet his end dueling Rogel Dorn, who would first cut off his hands and then decapitate him. Soon after the death of their Primarch, the Alpha Legion would retreat. Though the Loyalists ultimately repelled the attack, the Alpha Legion had escaped with stolen intelligence, pinpointing exactly where Rogel Dorn's defenses were both strong and weak, and after consulting the warp and with demonic aid, Horus was able to find vital warp routes into the Sol system itself. With the solar system's secret pathways laid bare, Horus conceived a direct and merciless plan. A lightning strike through the 2 gates into the solar system, the Chthonic Gate at Pluto and the Elysian Gate at Uranus, both stable corridors into the heart of Terra. And the Warmaster was prepared. He had gathered a vast host of traitors, sons of Horus, Iron Warriors, Emperor's Children, Word-bearers, Night Lords, Thousand Sons, the Dark Mechanicum, Traitor Guardsmen, Mutants, and any of those who wanted to watch the Imperium burn. He had even managed to gather 5 of his traitor brethren. Perturabo, the Lord of Iron, Fulgrim, now a demon prince of Slaanesh, Mortarion, the decayed piece of shit, now a demon prince of Nurgle, Angron, now ascended as the demon prince of Khorne, and a raging bloodthirsty monster, and last but not least, Magnus the Red, now a demon prince of Tzeentch. Each brought a unique horror to bear. Siegecraft, psychic devastation, demonic war engines, terror warfare, and much, much more. Horus planned to unleash his host in a multi-pronged assault meant to collapse the Sol system's defenses in days, not months. Every minute lost increased the chance of Guilliman or the Lion's arrival. Horus was betting everything on momentum, speed, and sheer shock. If he faltered, the Loyalists would have enough time to react, and in that time, the dream of his rebellion would bleed out across the stars. So if the Loyalists dug in, Horus finally made his move. On the first day of the first month of M31, the traitor Armada arrived in the Sol system right on cue. And from the very beginning, this wasn't going to be a single decisive clash. This was a brutal, multi-layered system-spanning campaign that would unfold like a slow-motion apocalypse. The traitors had finally arrived in the solar system and were eager to spill Loyalist blood. The assault began with a dual strike at the system's two critical warp routes, the Chthonic Gate at Pluto and the Elysian Gate at Uranus. Sons of Horus under Horus Aximon smashed into Pluto's orbital defenses, while Perturabo led the Iron Warriors into Uranus. Both fleets slammed into heavily fortified Imperial fists and Armada positions. Sigismund held the first Saphir at Pluto aboard the Lacrimae, turning the moons themselves, now retrofitted into massive gun fortresses, into death traps. But the traitors vastly outnumbered the Loyalists at both Pluto and Uranus, and their ranks included fresh newborn Astartes that were twisted by warp madness. And so, the traitors slowly but surely chipped away at the Loyalist defenders until the moons began to fall one by one. Sabotage, scrap code, and demon-possessed technology turned the defenses on themselves. When Kerberos fell, one of Pluto's most heavily fortified moons, Sigismund turned its defeat into a weapon. He detonated the moon in a devastating trap that tore the pursuing traitor fleet apart. Using the chaos as cover, he launched a vicious counterattack, his smaller fleet cutting down swaths of enemy ships before the sheer weight of numbers overwhelmed his smaller defense force. In the brutal fighting, Sigismund's ship was boarded, and he met little Horus Aximon in a blade-to-blade duel that would leave Aximon maimed and Sigismund bloodied. Yet even such heroics could not save Pluto. With his forces shattered, Sigismund was forced to withdraw to the fourth Saphir near Jupiter with the remnants of his fleet. The first Saphir had fallen. At Uranus, things were even worse. Perturabo had thrown over 4,000 ships through the Elysian Gate, some of which were mass conveyor hulks turned into suicidal fireships that were used as fodder to break through the Loyalist minefields. From the monstrous Daughter of Woe, a space hulk rearmed with absurd levels of firepower, Perturabo rained annihilation on the fourth Saphir. Fortress moons were shattered, kill zones overrun, and the moon's defenses were assaulted by mutant hordes, drug gangers, and slave soldiers by the millions. Halbrick, aboard the battle barge Monarch of Fire, held out for as long as he could before pulling back what forces remained. The second Saphir had fallen, but Horus wasn't done. From above the solar system and the galactic disk came another traitor fleet. This one, led by Abaddon, Ahriman, and Zardu Lyak, consisting of traitor legionaries and dark mechanicum elements, they bypassed Loyalist defenses and plunged their way towards Mars and Luna. The White Scar's Outriders intercepted them, but not even Jubal Khan's brilliance could stop their advance. He would fall to Abaddon aboard the Lance of Heaven in one of the coolest duels in 30k history, as the pair fought in zero gravity, and although Jubal cut Abaddon dozens of times, it was simply not enough. Meanwhile, Mars was thrown into chaos. The third Saphir's fleet under Camda Diaz faced attacks from both orbit and the traitorous mechanicum within. With the outer system crumbling, Dorn was forced to finally deploy the Phalanx, the Imperium's mightiest fortress ship. But it was too little, too late. Farther from Terra, near Venus, Ahriman had prepared a great ritual with the help of the Word Bearers, and upon completion, they tore a hole in the fabric of reality, creating a massive warp rift just outside of Terra. And from that warp rift came everything. Demon fleets, corrupted Astartes, and the Primarchs themselves. Fulgrim, Angron, and Horus emerged at the head of an armada so vast it blackened the stars. Luna's orbital defenses, larger than the whole Imperial fleets, were annihilated in minutes. Abaddon led a suicide run that breached the moon's defenses and secured the Selnar gene vaults, turning the tide even further, as with the gene vaults intact, the traitors could soon start manufacturing even more space marines. And that's not even the final horror.
Oh, not good.
Within the Phalanx, Dorn faced the demon Samus, who had been unleashed through the body of the Remembrancer, Mercedes Ulton, corrupted by Malachurst long ago. In a savage close-quarters battle, Samus and his demon horde tore through the ship's command deck. Dorn's own librarians were unleashed for the first time since Nicaea, but even that wasn't enough. Only when Ulton sacrificed herself to seal the warp gate did the slaughter end. Luna was lost, Mars was overrun, and the entire outer system was in flames. Dorn had no choice but to pull back the phalanx and consolidate what fleet elements he had left at Terra. The traitors had broken through every sphere, shattered every defense, and now surrounded Terra. After just over a month of fighting, orbital bombardments began to fall on the throne world itself. The Solar War was over, the siege had begun. What followed was the brutal Siege of Terra, a cataclysmic campaign that nearly shattered the throne world itself. Billions perished, cities were leveled, and the conflict ended with the deaths of both Sanguinius and Horus, with the Emperor left mortally wounded and entombed upon the Golden Throne for all time. Coming off the sheer scale and complexity of the Solar War, I can only hope its sequel appears in the first book of the Scouring. Guilliman's arrival should capture that same sense of epic spectacle, only this time with the Loyalists surging forward in righteous vengeance. The Solar War is the grimdark equivalent of Helm's Deep, the Battle of Endor, and D-Day all cranked to 11. Warp storms tear open reality, demons crash against void shields, and every moment radiates high stakes. This is why the Solar War stands as arguably the greatest space battle Warhammer 40K has ever seen. But let's talk about what makes it so goddamn cool. What makes the Solar War not just impressive, but unforgettable is how it elevates the humanity of the conflict alongside its colossal scale. This is a tragic, desperate last stand, and the characters shine in ways that define their legacies. The Loyalist portrayal is absolutely phenomenal. Figures like Sigismund, Jagatai Khan, Rogel Dorn, Sanguinius, Garviel Loken, and Malkador all get powerful moments that showcase their personalities, burdens, and brilliance. Dorn in particular is a highlight. As we watch his autistic self struggle throughout the battle, he knows he can't win, but he also understands that time is now a weapon.
Go! Time roulette!
Guilliman's reinforcements are coming, and Horus must be fast in order to win. Dorn's genius is in making the traitors bleed for every inch, and in doing so, buying humanity its final narrow hope. The tension in his choice to hold the phalanx back, suspecting Horus of some trickery, which turns out to be right. He is calm, calculating, but there's an undercurrent of sorrow and grim duty that makes every line he speaks just hit so freaking hard.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
The second thing I absolutely love about the Solar War is the strategy is actually kinda realistic. Dividing the Sol system into defensive spheres, each manned by unique fleet and assets, shows how grounded the Loyalists were in attritional warfare. Sigismund's defense of Pluto with orbital fortress moons turned into death traps, or Halbert's minefield around Uranus, all feel like desperate attempts to protect the crumbling solar system. And as for the traitors, they don't just use brute force, they use the stolen Alpha Legion's data, chaos rituals, and even demons to outmaneuver their enemies. You feel like you're not watching just a fight, but a war of ideologies between two completely different sides. The corrupted humans who have accepted chaos, and an Imperium that completely rejects them. Thirdly, the scale is finally what 30K always promised. Hundreds of fleets, thousands of vessels, tens of thousands of boarding actions, millions of combatants, all slowly bleeding their way towards Terra through the void. It's a grinding, realistic campaign, and you feel the weight of every loss and every inch gain. When Pluto explodes in a desperate trap, you witness it through the eyes of traitor Marines, realizing they've been lured into devastation. Throughout the book, you get to witness the Loyalist defenses collapse one planet at a time. From Halbert's perspective, you see the fall of Uranus and the unraveling of its defenses, a veteran of the Imperial Fist, watching centuries of preparation crumble under the relentless fury of the Warmaster's forces. Civilians flee the moons of Jupiter, desperate to escape the oncoming tide of traitor warships and warp-spawn nightmares, their hope fading with every transmission lost. You see it all from multiple angles. You even get to see Abaddon's secret attack on Luna while he's wrestling with ambition, fury, and legacy. And through all of it, there's this looming inevitability. Terra is next, the final bastion, the last wall. Oh my god, so intense. The stakes are crazy, fellas. And then fourthly, the duels are so glorious in this book. Jubal Khan vs. Abaddon in zero gravity void combat is both brutal and elegant. Sigismund vs. Horus Aximon is another great duel. It's a tragic mirror match of fate and vengeance. Their fight both personal and symbolic. And then we have the Big Daddy himself, Rogel Dorn vs. Samus on the Phalanx, which is one of the cooler duels because we finally get to see Rogel Dorn in action against a greater demon. Loken even returns, fighting a shit ton of demons on the Phalanx as well. These moments are character defining, fate sealing, and are simply epic. And let's not forget the psychic duel the Emperor and Horus are having in the Warp. We see the Emperor is reduced to a vulnerable figure hiding behind a dying fire, while Horus appears vast and corrupted beyond recognition. These Warp dreamscapes reveal the soul of the heresy itself, the tragedy of a father losing his son, and the terror of realizing your greatest weapon is slipping through your fingers. The next thing that I really loved about the Solar War is for a fleeting, precious moment, the Loyalists believe they've held the line and are victorious. The defenders of the Sol system have bled the traitors so much and made them waste so much time that the Loyalist defenders believe they've won. Even Sanguinius dared to speak aloud what many thought in secret. Horus had failed. Time was the weapon of the Emperor, and Terra had stood defiant. But as we all know, the Warp does not care about your mortal schedules. Horus was able to lead his fleet directly out of the Warp right near Terra. Through the Warp rift caused by Ahriman, the entire traitor armada surged through, bypassing the rest of the solar system's defenses. Fulgrim in his demonic splendor, Angron frothing and blood mad, and literally surfing on the top of the Conqueror, and then Horus to claim his throne. In a single breath, the Solar War was lost. What had felt like a hard-fought stand was nothing but a prelude to the real horror to come. The Warp had twisted reality, and the traitors had won. Finally, what seals the Solar War as possibly the greatest space battle in 40K is that every single part, from massive fleet maneuvers to intimate knife duels, feels earned. It connects back to earlier novels like Praetorian of Dorn and Slaves of Darkness, tying threads together in a climax worthy of this series. Whether you're here for the fleet tactics, character arcs, demon madness, or high-stakes duels, the Solar War delivers it all with weight and a slow, devastating ending, which makes you want to continue the Siege of Terra to see how the Loyalists get out of this pickle. If you love scale, strategy, and soul-crushing deaths, the Solar War is 40K at its absolute best. Now, before concluding this video, I feel like I've got to talk about the stuff that could have been better. First off, where was the glorious showdowns between the massive ships of the legions? Where were the Glorianas, guys? Where was the Red Tier? Where was the Eternal Crusader? The Conqueror? The Vengeful Spirit? I mean, imagine a scene where the Phalanx unleashes its arsenal against the Conqueror. A massive space battle that would leave the Void literally burning. We did get some big Void battles, but we didn't get one absolutely brutal cinematic clash of naval titans that would have elevated the battle to even further heights. And this next one is just me being biased, but I really wish there had been a Primarch duel. Like, give me Khan versus Fulgrim, or Khan versus Angron, or Khan honestly against anyone. I just want to see that guy kill someone. Like, imagine a zero-gravity fight between Angron and the Khan as derbies ran around them while they clashed like mythical figures in the heart of their dying empire.
I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. I need it!
I feel like Dorn vs. Samus just doesn't hit enough compared to a Primarch duel. And speaking of Samus, can we talk about how overused that boy is? He popped up in the very first trilogy, made a mess at No Fear, and now he's here yet again. He's the Horus Heresy equivalent of a Marvel cameo. This was the perfect opportunity to introduce a new demon entity. Or like I just said, let a demon Primarch fight Dorn. At this stage in the war, it would have landed so much harder and added so much more sense of escalation if the Primarchs themselves were fighting. Another area that could have been stronger was the trader's perspective. Abaddon gets a few interesting moments, but he spends most of the battle far from the real action. None of the other traitor Primarchs receive much focus outside of Perturabo, with Fulgrim and Angron only appearing at the very end of the book, almost as an afterthought. I found myself wishing the traitor side had been written with more depth, giving them real plot development beyond serving as a measuring stick for the loyalists. As usual, the traitor POV mostly exists to showcase how well the loyalists are holding the line, mowing down hordes of enemy traitors, even as they ultimately overwhelm them through sheer number of force. It makes the traitors feel less like characters and more like props to highlight the heroism and desperation of the defenders. I feel like this is a reoccurring theme in most Horus Heresy novels, as the traitors are just painted as complete idiots who only ever win if chaos buffs are involved or if there are just simply too many of them. Lastly, I do wish the other two legions, the Blood Angels and the White Scars, had a little more spotlight. I get it, this is kind of the Imperial Fist's thing, holding the line and building their walls, but this would have been a great time to show the Red Tier in action or the White Scars fully using their best tactics in space to battle the oncoming traitor horde. Still, I can't be mad, watching the Imperial Fist body the oncoming Iron Warriors was peak fiction, fellas. In conclusion, John French truly outdid himself with the Solar War. This book stands as a fantastic achievement in Warhammer 40K storytelling, capturing the vast scale, the tragic stakes, and the deeply human moments of the conflict that so many fans have long awaited. The portrayal of the massive fleet battles, the careful strategy, and the rich character work all come together to create a story that feels both epic and grounded. While there are a few things where the narrative could have been pushed even further, such as more climactic battles between the largest Gloriana warships, additional Primarch duels, or just a fresh take on the Blood Angels or White Scars, these are minor points in what is otherwise a deeply satisfying and immersive experience. The Solar War truly delivers on its promise to show the brutal, grinding nature of the Heresy's final approach to Terra, and it does so with clarity and scale that few stories in the setting have matched. For anyone who loves Warhammer 30K, the Solar War is simply a must-read. And that about wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a love letter to you guys. I simply just love the Solar War, and I just wanted you guys to know about it and maybe check it out, because as I just talked about, it's such a cool space battle and definitely worth a read. So as always guys, stay milked, don't forget to virus bomb your friendly neighborhood cow farm, and I'll see you in the next video.